Namaste. This is David Hawthorne at astroreview.com. Today is the 25th of September 2018. Now today, Bill Cosby was sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison for sexual assault. I have here his birth information, July 12, 1937, 12:30 a.m. in Philadelphia. Now, before we get into the current transits and the current situation, let me just also mention that if you go to YouTube and then you type in Astro View 108, you will come to a David Hawthorne video channel. This has the videos I've done over the years, and if you scroll down, maybe about halfway or so, go back to, it was about 4 years ago, I think. We will find, let's see, yeah, here they are. So here's Bill Cosby. So this was about 3 years ago. There's 3 parts, Bill Cosby 1, 2, and 3. Now toward the end of 3, or somewhere in 3, I do talk about his situation, and I did say during these videos that I thought he was guilty of sexually attacking women, and that there would be civil suits and imprisonment and losses, that type of thing. So if you want to check out these videos, that's fine. But let me just today focus on the current situation. So he ran his Jupiter main period from March 1990 until March 2006, and he went into 19 years of Saturn. So that's, what, 12 years ago or so. Runs for 19 years. Now, he has the Pisces rising sign. And we say for Pisces there are 4 planets that will never cause harm, and these 4 planets can and should be strengthened to add protective covering to life. So Moon is favorable because it rules the 5th house of mind and children. Mercury is favorable because it rules the 7th house of marriage. Mars is favorable because it rules the 2nd house of wealth and status and family life. And we say that Jupiter is favorable. It rules the 10th house of career. See, Jupiter is a planet of luck, and you'll see that it's in its own sign of Sagittarius. So technically it becomes a Panch Mahapurush Yoga, one of the 5 great yogas of life. This one's called Hamsa Yoga. But it brought a lot of luck into his professional life. Jupiter is connected with publishing, teaching, consulting. He actually ended up very heavily connected with a university in Pennsylvania. He has good education, actually, but this just brings luck in his professional life. And any time planets are close to the rising sign degree, they have an impact in the houses they occupy and in the houses they aspect. So both Jupiter and Mars are close to the rising sign degree. So Jupiter's 5th aspect into the 2nd house gave him wealth and status and family life and children. And Jupiter's 7th aspect gave him property and happiness. And its 9th aspect helped him with his finances and overcoming enemies and obstacles, that type of thing. But Jupiter is weak in old age degree, so he would need the yellow sapphire gemstone or the mystical pendant, the Kavach, to strengthen that Jupiter. Mars is a favorable planet, ruling the 2nd house of wealth, status, and speech, and family life. And at 27 degrees, it's on the rising sign degree, so its 7th aspect is very beneficial. And actually, its 4th aspect gives income connected with property, and this also is connected with windfalls and easy money. And Mars, the 7th aspect, is into the 2nd house, so he was very courageous and direct with his speech. And its 8th aspect into the 3rd house was also favorable for his own self-efforts. But in general, he should have strengthened Jupiter, which is also wisdom, morality, and luck. And Jupiter does have a problem. Jupiter is in a house afflicted by Sun. See, what I was saying is that Pisces has 4 favorable planets. So that's Mercury, Moon, Mars, and Jupiter. But Pisces have 5 planets that can cause adverse effects. Now, nobody escapes Rahu and Ketu. All 12 rising signs can have trouble with Rahu and Ketu. They're functional malefics for everybody. But the 6th house, the 8th house, and the 12th house are Dustan Bhavas, inauspicious houses. So if the 6th, 8th, or 12th contains a Multricone sign, then the ruler of that house becomes a functional malefic planet. So all planets have an exaltation sign, all planets have a debilitation sign, and all planets have a Multricone sign. So, for example, Sun is exalted in Aries, Sun is debilitated in Libra, and Sun's Multricone sign is Leo. So the Multricone signs are 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 11. Aries for Mars, Cancer for Moon, Leo for the Sun, Virgo for the Mercury, Libra for the Venus, Sagittarius for the Jupiter, and Aquarius for the Saturn. Those are the Multricone signs. 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 11. Anytime you look at any chart, look for those numbers. And if they fall in the 6th, 8th, or 12th, that ruler is a functional malefic planet for that rising sign only. So in this case, the 6th house, Dustan Bhava, contains the number 5, so that renders Sun a functional malefic planet. The 8th house contains the number 7, so that renders Venus a functional malefic planet. And in the 12th house, we have the number 11, Aquarius, that renders Saturn a functional malefic planet. Again, I'll go into more detail in the 3 videos. But what I'm pointing out is that Pisces should never strengthen Saturn, Sun, or Venus. They're malefic planets. Well, Sun is close to the rising sign degree. So it technically afflicts the 4th house of home life and happiness and domestic peace and family life. And it afflicts his 10th house of career, and it afflicts Jupiter, ruling male children. Actually, his son, if you recall, was murdered. He was killed on a highway. So there it comes from the Sun. But Sun is also the government and authority figures. And it afflicts Jupiter, ruling the 10th house of karma and career and professional life. So sooner or later it catches up. Now Venus is not on the rising sign degree, and it's not close to Ketu or Rahu, so it doesn't cause any trouble. Venus is in its own sign of Taurus. That's fine. So this is the house of self-expression. And Venus is the fine arts, the performing arts, and the healing arts. So he got into the performing arts. He was in acting, television. But here's the problem. Saturn at 12 degrees is a functional malefic planet for Pisces. And it throws an aspect 3 houses away, 7 houses away, and 10 houses away. It's not on the rising sign degree, so it doesn't bother the 7th house or the 10th house, and it doesn't bother Jupiter. It doesn't bother Ketu because it's 9 degrees from Ketu. But look how far it is from Venus. 1 degree. Technically, this is less than 1 degree. 1107 would be 1 degree. This is 1126. It's closer to 1207. So what I'm saying here is that Saturn, ruling the 12th house of losses, expenses, depression, isolation, imprisonment, hospitalization, afflicts Venus, ruling wife and women. So this is not good. Venus rules the 8th house of death-like experiences. Saturn rules 12th house of imprisonment. Moon really his mind and emotional state. Now it is in Leo, so it's very pitta, very fiery. So he was very brazen. But this causes a lot of mental tension. And this also causes some serious issues relative to children. So again, he lost his son through an act of violence. Mercury ruling relationships is actually quite weak at 0 degrees. And it's ruled by the moon in the house of conflict. Venus rules the 8th house of marital bond, and it's under the affliction of Saturn. So I think there was some hidden stress, and ultimately it causes separation from wife and loss of wife. Okay, now let's take a look at the current situation. So he entered his Saturn 19 years in March. So it afflicts Venus. It rules losses and hospitalization and imprisonment. The current operating planet, the current hands on the clock just changed. Now he just ran 19 months of moon in the house of conflict and litigation, disputes, bankruptcy, divorce. It rules Sun, so basically it drags Sun into this house, a planet. Actually, it's the other way around. I apologize. This moon is in Leo, so it's ruled by the Sun. And this Sun is in a house that is afflicted. No matter it's doing the afflicting, it's afflicting the 4th house. So its Sun becomes weak. So the landlord for Moon is weak, can't protect it. And Sun is afflicting Jupiter and the house that Jupiter's in. So there's 2 afflictions to Jupiter. One, Sun is within 3 degrees of Jupiter, and 2, Sun afflicts the house. It's an 80% affliction to the house itself. If it was 27 degrees, it'd be 100% affliction. So at 26, it's 80. Now, so this 19 months of moon was not easy. So he's been under a lot of stress. In fact, going back even to here, look at this. This is all trouble here. So here's Venus in December 2012, afflicted by Saturn. Has to do with women. Then he goes into Sun in 2016 for, that's a year, afflicting the 4th house of happiness and afflicting the 10th house of karma. Then he hit 19 months of moon, rules the mind, and it rules marriage and relationships. It's in the house of stress, conflicts and disputes, mental tension, legal problems. Now, just earlier this month, September 9th, he entered this Mars subperiod, which runs for a little more than a year. Mars for him is a favorable planet, but where is it placed? It's in the 8th house, Dustan Bhava. This house is called Randra, transformations, vulnerability, accidents, setbacks, delays, obstructions, disappointments, and even death-like experiences. And it's weak in old age degrees, so it's a weak Mars. And the landlord for Mars is an afflicted Saturn. Next up will be 18 months of Rahu from October 2019 to August 2022. So that's also not ideal. Now, Rahu does not afflict any houses, signs, or planets. It's in its debilitation sign, but maybe there can be some release, between, a year from now up for the following 3 years. So 1 to 4 years, there could be some freedom for him. Or either that or in the Jupiter period might be a little better for him. But this Mars period is not good for this year. So here's the transit chart. Let's see what's going on here. So Saturn is the main period ruler. It's at 8 degrees. It throws an aspect 3 houses away, 7 houses away, and 10 houses away. So at 8 degrees, it's afflicting Sun at 8 degrees. And Sun is the government and authority figures. And Sun rules his 6th house of Leo, the house of litigation, disputes, enemies, mental tension, health issues, financial issues. So that's not good. Number 2, Mars is the operating planet. Its landlord, Venus, is afflicted by this Saturn. And its landlord right now is in the 8th house. Oh, here's the point. Look at this Mars. Look at this transit Mars right here. 10 degrees today, and Ketu is at 10 degrees. This has been really difficult for the whole world since May. See, Mars came into Capricorn, and then sometime in May, it went right over Ketu. This is always a disaster. This is what we had. We had this combination on September the 11th, 2001. On 9/11, Ketu was afflicting Mars. Mars is property. Ketu is violence and explosion as well. So going back to this May, late May, when these two collided, we started having volcanoes like in Hawaii and Guatemala, and then fires and floods and earthquakes, tornadoes, typhoons. It's been horrible. So Mars went over Ketu, tried to pull away but couldn't get away, went retrograde back over Ketu, started to pull away, and then went direct, and now this is the third and final time. So the affliction is very serious for June, July, August, and September. So he couldn't get out of this. Mars was a subperiod, and Ketu is also connected with ashrams and being reclusive. So it's also connected with prisons and hospitals as well, and homelessness. He's now homeless. So there's that affliction there. Mercury, ruling marriage and relationships and partnerships, is under this Ketu 9th aspect, 5, 7, and 9 houses away. So Ketu has been afflicting Mercury the last few days. And Ketu has been afflicting Sun, 5, 7, and 9 houses away. Sun is the government, authority figures, and Ketu afflicting Mercury, ruling marriage and relationships and partnerships. Venus is in its own sign that is favorable. The planet cannot harm its own house. Let's see what else is going in here. So here's Rahu sitting here, 5, 7, and 9. There it is, this transit Rahu sitting over here in the 5th house. Aspects 5 houses away, 7 houses away, and 9 houses away. Now this Rahu and Ketu, now here's a great little technique. They always travel retrograde, backwards. So they enter a house at 30 degrees, and then they exit the house at 0 degrees. So previously Ketu was in Aquarius, and next it'll be in Sagittarius, and vice versa. Rahu was in Leo, now it's in Cancer. When it exits Cancer, it will go into Gemini. They spend 18 months in even signs. The even signs are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Then they spend 18 months in odd signs, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11. So whether they are in even signs or odd signs, they still have the potential to impact any transit planet in even signs by conjunction or aspect, either in the transit chart or in the natal chart. You just take these planets and overlay them in the natal chart. 3 ways to look at transits, by the way. Ketu transit planets can impact transit planets. Transit planets can impact natal planets. So, for example, this Ketu is afflicting this Venus right now. Venus ruling wife. Ketu at 10 degrees is afflicting Venus at 11 degrees. And this transit Rahu over here is afflicting this Saturn up here. And vice versa. The transit planets can impact transit planets. Transit planets can impact natal planets, and natal planets can impact transit planets. So there's three ways to look at it. But while these are traveling retrograde, Rahu and Ketu, entering at 30, exiting at 0, along the line they will pick a particular number and stop for 3 months at that particular degree. And if that's your degree or one of your planets, either your rising sign degree or you have a planet in an even sign at that number, then those 3 months are very difficult. First month you say something is wrong. Second month you say something is seriously wrong. And the third month you think you're going to die. You think you're not going to make it. Anybody can take a 3-day fever, but you can't take a 3-month fever. So what I'm getting at is that this last time, or earlier this year, January, February, March, Rahu and Ketu were in even signs, 10 and 4, stationary at 20 degrees. So let's see if he had anything at 20 degrees. Well, he had Ketu at 21, Rahu at 21. So there was an affliction. This Ketu was afflicting this Ketu, this Rahu was afflicting this Rahu. So if you subtract 9 degrees from 20, you get 11 degrees. So the next time that Rahu and Ketu stopped was at 11 degrees, and that was late June. And why is that a problem? Because Ketu sitting here at 11 degrees was afflicting Venus at 11 degrees. And this Rahu sitting here at 11 degrees was afflicting this Saturn at 12 degrees. So that was all of July, August, and September. They're not done yet. Now they moved, but they just barely moved. They're only at 10 degrees. Now, if they stopped at 11, just so you know, if you're studying, the next time they stop will be 2 degrees in even signs. So you just look to see if anything in the transit chart is at 2 degrees at that time. They'll stop in December, around the middle of December. And that'll be December 2018 and January and February 2019 at 2 degrees. So this Rahu is going to be on top of his Mercury. Not 100%, not 80%, but it'll be a 60% affliction of Rahu on his Mercury. So that'll be a challenge. But right now, transit Ketu has been afflicting his Venus, which is wife, and 8th house of death-like experiences. Anyways, I hope this helps a bit on your understanding of how these things come to fruition during Mahadasha and Antradasha, main period and subperiod. So this whole 19 years, see, is not ideal for him. And it's relative to women, Venus, women. Venus is also sisters and wife and women. And it rules the 8th house of death-like experiences, transformations and vulnerability. And Mars is in that house. And Mars is ruled by an afflicted Venus. Saturn is afflicting Venus. And you saw the other issues here. Sun afflicting the 4th house of happiness and the 10th house of professional life. And it's the government. And it has to do with litigation and disputes. Okay. Hope this is helpful. So I feel badly for him. You know, everybody feels badly for him. He had so much going for him in his life, but he, like a lot of men, have misused their power. That's where we have this whole Me Too thing. And by the way, the reason, in my opinion, for the whole Me Too movement is that Jupiter, back in September 2017, about a year ago, entered Libra. And Libra is ruled by Venus. Venus is women and the arts. Venus is the scales. You know, it's Libra, the scales of justice. And Jupiter is law and wisdom and morality and education and husband and children. So this is a 13-month transit of Jupiter through Libra, ruled by Venus. So it's brought to light all this sexual harassment. There's been something like 200 prominent celebrities, politicians, business leaders that have been either, accused or indicted, or have lost their jobs, or have had some public humiliation. So I'm just hoping that this is a long-lived societal change, so that we don't have to keep going backwards in this stuff. Okay. Stay in touch. This is David Hawthorne at astroview.com. Namaste.